This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruitment podcast. And I'm really happy and excited to be welcoming to our global community today somebody who's actually, in geographical terms, not that far from me. I live in sort of a semi-rural part of Lancashire, just north of Greater Manchester. But this next guest is actually based not far from me in Ribble Valley in Preston. This is Phoebe Stowe-Forbes, who is the founder of .Recruit and actually fellow podcast host, which I know we're going to come on and talk to you. Welcome to today, Phoebe. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Thank you. We should have done this in person, shouldn't we? Really, we should have grabbed a coffee.
We should. Well, we can still do it. And apparently, we've almost nearly met. You were saying at Hishem's event in October 2022. Yeah. And interestingly, if you are an avid listener, you'll know that Hishem has just been on the pod. So I'm sure we'll be mentioning him plenty times over. Now, you're somebody that I've been admiring on LinkedIn. I said to you off camera that I feel like I know you, which is the power of personal brand. Yeah. But there'll be plenty of people that don't know who you are. So for the benefit of those, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, fab, thank you. So I'm Phoebe Stowe-Forbes, founder of .Recruit, like Leisha just said, up in Preston. We've been established now for just coming up to our fourth year. We were set up in 2019. And at the moment, there's 4 of us, so we are a small team, but with big growth plans. So we've got like a 5-phase growth plan over the next 3 years to grow to 16 consultants. Wow. We're accountancy finance specialists, and we recruit solely in the Lancashire area. So we're super niche, but we love that. And I'm a solo founder, so I set up completely on my own with the plan to just be a solo founder and just be myself, kind of freelance a little bit. And somehow I've blinked and there's 4 of us and I wouldn't have it any other way. I absolutely love it.
I love that. Accidental growth, but now you've actually got a vision to scale. That will resonate with so many of our listeners because, I mean, our global community is far-reaching. We know that there's people sitting in all walks of life across our global listeners, but the feedback we get is actually a lot of people who maybe are waiting to do what you've done and launch on their own, and also those who are starting out in their career, and I know that that's been your growth model so far. Just tell us a bit about your pod as well. Is it called Joining the Dots?
Joining the Dots, yes. So it was actually Sophia who works for me. She was my first employee. She came in one morning and said, I really want to start a podcast. And I thought, where on earth are we supposed to have the time to record a podcast on top of everything else?
Oh, you're asking me.
I know. We need to do what you do and just get 8 people back to back. But and I think, there was no one else doing it in our space. It did go on hold temporarily when she was on maternity leave because it's her baby, really. She wanted to launch it. And I wasn't really a huge fan to start with. And then when we got going and we started chatting to people, I thought, right, actually, I could do this full time. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we are going to come back to that, actually, because there's plenty, again, just in terms of understanding the narrative of where we're at in 2023, there's plenty of people listening who, again, are thinking, should I be launching? Should I be getting on this bandwagon? And the answer is yes, you should. But we will come back to that. But I love that. And is she back now? She safely had baby?
Back. She's just landed back. Yeah, she's.
Right.
I think when she was 4 days back into the business, she had like 6 interviews set up on a different job. She works a really candidate short market. She works the accountancy practice market, which is really, really niche and very difficult to navigate. But she's just smashing it. So it's great.
Wonderful. Now on your profile, I love it. And I love the sort of diversity on there as well. You have become the highest rated accountancy and finance recruiter in Lancashire. So how did that happen and why did you set out to do this, or did you?
It was accidental to start with, as a lot of things seem to be with me. I think I'm finding a bit of a theme here. What I love about .Recruit and my journey so far is how well things have just flown and kind of like flown and kind of rolled into sort of, really great things that we've then decided to push forwards with and make it something bigger. And being the highest rated was one of them. So I was sat at my desk one day and I got a notification that said someone had left us a review on Google, and my heart sank because I thought, God, what does this mean? Because everyone's worst nightmare, if you absolutely are so focused on your reputation and being the best at what you do, your heart does drop just in case. But it was a 5-star review that one of my clients had left and I hadn't asked for it. And I thought, that's so lovely. And I just thought the way that it made me feel, that's why I do it, for the satisfaction and, making other people happy. So we started asking, a few of our clients and candidates, when you get a sec, could you just leave us an honest review on Google? And before we knew it, we had loads of Google reviews, and we've got about 20 or 30, we are niche, but we've got about 20 or 30 competitors in our space. And one day I was just having a look and we popped up right at the top of Google. And I thought, that's interesting. How come we're at the top? We're the newest agency. Is that why? And then I looked, it seems to sort of like boost you up the rankings if you've got quite a lot of Google reviews.
Yeah.
So we continue to push it then. And what's so funny is I've mentioned this on a few podcasts and a few sort of on LinkedIn a few times. And I've started to notice that when I check it now, because if we're going to shout about being the highest rated, we need to make sure we're still the highest rated.
Absolutely.
And
yes, you do.
So funny, because what I've noticed is the odd time I've checked it, some of our competitors have now started to jump on the same thing.
They realise the value of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm really pleased. I've never talked about this before, believe it or not, and I've done nearly 200 episodes, and I think it's a really useful thing for leaders to be thinking about, or those who are solopreneurs like you and me, in that it's actually something you can do for free. And you do, and it takes 2 minutes to write a Google review. And I actually think if you can get into the habit of doing it yourself when you've had a great meal somewhere, or you've used an accountant, or you've been to a chiropractor, whatever it might be, is it actually elevates your own SEO score as well.
Yeah.
But have you had anybody like any trolls on there? Because we've had problems with trolls.
No, we haven't. Really, and I've kind of, as much as I don't want to, sort of like speak it into existence, I've kind of mentally prepared myself for if it does happen, it's not the end of the world. It won't be a massive fall from grace. There will be people that might not be as happy as the others, that not have had the same service as the others, or they might be upset at how something was handled, and I've come to terms with and accepted that. I think it'll still be a blow if it happens. It's
more if it was I mean, it's only ever happened once where we had a very malicious one, and it was clearly, the irony is that it actually almost had a counterintuitive effect, that people then felt they wanted to give us better reviews even more, because it was so alien to anything, like, because they were talking about sent my CV everywhere, and anyone that knows me knows that I just don't send CVs anyway. I don't even ask for a CV. That's just not my service. I'm very consultative. So it just kind of made them look a bit of an idiot, and they were obviously a pseudonym. It wasn't a real person, but I think it's a really good thing to talk about, because it's something that any business can do for free if you are limited on marketing resources. And I think it's a really nice way to elevate yourself amongst your competition. And if you're actually then encouraging your competition by ergo to then concentrate on theirs, then it's elevating our industry, which for me is what this is all about. It's about us elevating one another. But I think
what a lot of people don't realise as well is just how much inbound business you get from it.
Yeah, you do.
Just how much.
Well, just from
the
amount
of phone calls.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think we do come up at the top of the search now. If you type in Accounts and Finance Recruiter Lancashire, I think we do come up at the top now. And we don't pay for any SEO marketing at all. Good. It's purely the Google reviews that have done that. So if you're not doing that,
it is a hack. And I got told that about 3-4 years ago, before COVID and before I did all my work on LinkedIn. I'm telling you now, it works. So if you're not doing it, you need to go and do it now, guys. It's different to Glassdoor. We're not talking about potentially recruiting for yourselves, but this is about you attracting your desirable customers. So thank you for that. So we did allude to it a little bit earlier on in your introduction, that you are a fellow podcaster as well. So and I love that you, as I've got my Shannon creates, and she does all the production of it. I mean, she's amazing. This wouldn't exist without Shannon. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
What do you think creates a good podcast from your point of view, both as a contributor but also as a listener? And why do you think people choose to come and listen and follow you? Like, what do you think makes a good podcast?
So I think what makes it good is when it's adding value of some sort. I noticed that, so I absolutely loved the Diary of a CEO podcast, and that was always my go-to. I just loved listening to the guests that he brought on, but I started to notice that when I was scrolling through the list of episodes, I'd miss the ones that were, if it was a celebrity who was just telling their story of their life, I'd find that I wasn't really interested in that. And what I was interested in was when he brings on an expert in something, and that's going to add some kind of value. And I think it's the same with the stuff you write on LinkedIn, or the in-mails that you send to potential candidates or clients. It's all got to be about adding value. There's so much content out there these days. Wherever you look, everything is content. And so it's become really competitive to get the attention. And I think you've got to kind of think, what's in it for them. And if it's just going to be a chat about yourselves with no advice or tips or guidance on anything, it's not going to get the engagement that you want. And I think with podcasting, you've in your first few episodes, that's where people start to get used to what your style is and what type of value you add. So if you're starting off those first few just talking all about yourself and, you know, or someone else's story that's not going to add any value, you're going to lose that potential initial audience there that could become sort of like lifelong listeners.
Yeah, so definitely.
Attracting them, but also keeping them engaged. So yeah, that's the answer to your first question. And the other question, so did you ask something about my podcast there?
Yeah, just in terms of what you think, I guess, keeps people engaged, which I think you've kind of answered in terms of I like the fact that you're creating a story for your listener, aren't you? That they go on this journey with you. I'm like you, I'm a huge Stephen Bartlett fan. I've been to his live show.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I went to it as well.
Amazing. In fact, I think he's doing something really special. I'm like, please choose me. But that might have happened since we've broadcast this. But anyway, but I also agree with you. I think that when he goes to the shiny celebs that don't necessarily have a compelling story that we can learn something from, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in anything like that. But I guess there's a podcast for everybody out there. But like you, I think if you're going to invest some time, whether it's like my episodes are never really more than 25 minutes, but if you're going to invest your time to learn something, which is what I think a podcast has the unique benefit to be able to do, because you can pause it, you can do it when you're putting the washing in, going for a walk with the dog, whatever it might be. You want to come away with something that you wouldn't have known otherwise. And that's my intention with this. It's if one person can learn something from each episode, that's enough for me, because it means that it was worth your time, because you've impacted one person's life in whatever way.
Then the only other thing that I would say is what keeps our listeners sort of engaged is finding a bit of a niche. So, I mean, the great thing is if you're a recruiter with a niche and you're thinking about starting a podcast, then you've already got your perfect audience and you've got all of their contact details just there waiting for this to hit their inbox. So because ours is centered around sort of ambitious accountants in the local area, and we're interviewing sort of people that have scaled the career ladder and asking them how they've done it. How did they get to FD by the age of 32 or whatever? Then that's what's, you know, getting people interested in listening. But it's also a great, again, for recruiters thinking about it, it's a great business development tool, because again, how inundated are our clients' inboxes at the moment with
100%.
I hope you are well. Something about, have you got any jobs? But if you were to send them instead at the
people still doing that. Shame on you.
I know. I went to a client meeting and he said, look at all this. And he showed me and I was so embarrassed. I was like, can I just say we would never, we just don't do BD for that reason.
Don't need to.
So what we do instead is if we've recorded a really great episode, we'll send it to a potential client or someone that we're wanting to register as a candidate. And it's just that softer approach of, you know, just wondered if you'd be interested in listening to this, or
thought you might recorded this. But can I just pivot that? If you are in a talent short market and you have got an amazing guest that you know a potential candidate is going to be interested in, I'm telling you now, they will come and talk to you and they will want to go and work for that client, and you will generate it. You're the one facilitating it as the recruiter.
Absolutely. So and that's the selling point to the client as well when we want to get them on. A lot of them, I mean, we had someone on recently who was an FD, the one that I mentioned, you know, by the age of 32.
Wow.
And he's got such a great story, but no one knows about this. And to be honest, the role that he's offering on paper wasn't amazing. And I just said, look, come on the podcast, let me interview you. And instead of sending out job specs to these candidates, I want to send this podcast episode and I want to say, do you want to work for this guy? Because just have a listen, is amazing. And it worked. And so that's the selling point to the client. This could actually just give you, you know, a different angle in the market.
Think about the EVP of actually, if you're listening to this now, whether you're recruiting legal, supply chain, HR, teachers, even if you're doing this once a month, right? Because we know Phoebe and I will absolutely hang our hat on it. It's a massive time commitment, which is why I do it this way. I'm very efficient. I block off one day a month. That's my podcast day. I don't think about it the rest of the month then. And I do it in advance. That's why sometimes we talk about things like in advance or retrospectively. But I'm telling you now that there's so many benefits to you as the recruiter, because you have got something really tangible that no other recruiter will have to be able to send to a potential candidate. Secondly, prep for an interview. The candidate gets to know that interviewer in a different way.
Yeah.
And I've done that so many times, and I promise you, if you've got any reservations from the candidate, that you blow them out the water. And there's another massive benefit as well, which you are testament to this, because you're like viral on LinkedIn, that you're never short of content ideas.
Yeah.
I've literally at any one point got about 50 content ideas because of my podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's amazing for that. You're absolutely right. I didn't
It's
even
true.
think of that angle. Yeah.
You can't, because and I bet so many of your clients ring up and go, Phoebe, can I just ask your opinion on this? What do you think? Because you're being seen as a very objective guide and coach and advisor, because you've got such a sort of unilateral, omnipotent view of your market. And that's what being a podcast, it isn't just about doing this, it's all the other bits as well. So I just say that for me, I think the podcast arena is only at the start, and that's why I think it's so exciting.
Yeah. You motivated me. I'm going to actually do what you do and just block a day out. I think it's so much more efficient.
So I literally block it out 2-3 months in advance. So I know I've always got enough content for the next quarter. It's a combination of either asking or people coming and asking me now, which is amazing. And then about a week before, because obviously we all wing it, you've all got your invites. And then about a week before, I sit down and I probably spend about 2-3 hours, usually on a weekend, going through the person's profile, looking at what they're talking about, what are they sharing. And then we talk about what topics I think is important to my audience. And then we kind of agree the overview. And then obviously we literally, just confirm it all a couple of days before that you're happy with everything. And that's it. And I think, so for anybody that's listening, you don't need to be a leader to launch a podcast. It's all, very accessible, but I do think it elevates your brand just a little bit to the next level.
Yeah. And you don't need any fancy equipment. We've just got our headsets on and Zoom, and that's all you need. That's
literally Zoom, although they have made it now that you have to pay if you want anything beyond half an hour, which is a bit of a pain in the arse. But you know what? It's about 15 quid a month. It's not a lot of money. Yeah. So no, thank you for that. That's been really insightful. Now, I've mentioned this chap's name a couple of times now, and I'm going to mention him again because Hisham has just recently been on our podcast, and you were one of the original recruitment mentors for Hisham. So just tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll sort of go further beyond.
Yeah. So when Hisham set up Recruitment Mentors, straight away, as soon as he told me about it, I thought I needed this my entire career. Where was this? And obviously, if he's been on and anyone's listened to that, you'll know a little bit more about what Recruitment Mentors is. It's a learning platform. And straight away, I just thought it was absolutely wonderful. I'd followed him for a while on LinkedIn anyway, and loved what he was putting out there. So when he mentioned, I've got this learning platform, we're looking for sort of the founding members to pretty much trial it and just sort of give us the feedback. It's kind of like the first sort of cohort of members, if you will. And as soon as I logged into it, I absolutely loved it. So I think that was about 3 years ago, I think. And now my team have logins to it, and I'll be sat working and I can hear Hisham's voice. Someone's coming from somewhere, and I'm like, what's going on? And they will just be taking time. They'll have 5 minutes and they'll just be taking time just to brush up their skills on something. So it's a really great tool. I've recorded sort of a little bit of content with him. I think it was actually around personal branding, funnily enough. And he's great, just the way that he knows what the market needs, and he knows what the members need. So yeah, if you've not checked out Recruitment Mentors, you've got to speak to Hisham, because
they will have done because, like I say, he's just been on the pod, so I'm pretty sure. So in your experience, obviously you're a leader, you're a founder, and you're bringing through, I think, your models to bring in sort of people who are on the learning journey themselves rather than the really experienced models. So what do you look for in a future mentor within your business? So how are you going to succession plan? And I know it's a bit of a hypothetical, but you've got people in the business, so surely you must be looking at that. What do you think makes a good mentor?
What do I think makes a good mentor? I think to make a good mentor to me is someone that, I suppose, has a lot of self-awareness and doesn't just think they know it all. And this has been something for my own journey, really, when I'm mentoring my team, just to be continuously learning myself. So I've got coaches for various different things. I've got a business coach, I've got a leadership coach, and I'll invest in that to make sure that I'm staying on top of my game, because otherwise all I'm going to do is develop people to my level, but I've still got so far to go. So I think a mentor is someone that absolutely just continues learning every single day. So I'll listen to a podcast most days, or most evenings I'll read a book on something. But I'm just absolutely obsessed with learning, and I think that's really important. But I think also being open-minded and I think you need a lot of empathy as well, and I think you need to have a certain sort of delivery of whatever it is you're trying to sort of support somebody with, and I think again that's something that has been quite a journey for me, because I just crash landed into leadership and didn't have any type of formal training. All I had was, I suppose, the example that had been set to for me by previous managers, and I think that's a lot of people sort of
very common.
And all I knew was I knew a little bit about what had worked well, and a lot about what I absolutely didn't want to be, because I'd had quite a lot of managers, and I think especially in recruitment, a lot of people get promoted based on billings, and that doesn't necessarily make them the best people manager or mentor. So that's what I would say in a mentor is important.
And then we'll come on to mentee. I'm going to ask you about mentee, because that ties in nicely with your business, doesn't it? I just want to pause on that though, because I think that will really resonate what you've said, that so much of what I see as a rec to rec, because I think it's always important to kind of put my view on things, because obviously people come to me generally because they are in an environment where they've accidentally, maybe, or through some kind of convoluted succession plan where maybe they're the last person standing, maybe it is just a natural progression, but they are plagiarizing what other people have done before, and it's actually not been a purposeful, intentional learning platform, which I think is what you're saying, and that really corroborates very well with I guess what we're trying to do in elevating our industry, and saying, look, just because it's always been done this way doesn't mean that's right for right now. But I think everything you've said there about self-awareness, that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think we should all sort of really be aware of what we're doing and our impact on other people. But I think it's that voracious appetite to learn, and you never know everything.
Yeah, exactly.
You just never know everything. So go on, I want to know, because your model is to bring in mentees, people who are going to be learning. And so what do you look for? And so for our listeners, a lot of whom are in their first recruitment jobs, what do you think makes a great future talent? And how do you then nurture
I can't believe I'm going to say this, because I feel as though this goes against everything that I am or was at that kind of stage in my career. But what I've noticed within my team, what I've noticed has really worked. And when I look at the best people that the best recruiters I've ever worked with, when I look at the top billers, what is it about them? It is they usually have something in common. They usually either did well at school, for example, or Claudia, who works for me, was head girl, or I used to work with a girl who was a fantastic recruiter, and it didn't surprise me when I found out she was a first class grad. And I'm not I didn't go to uni, and I actually don't agree with uni at all. I think it's ridiculous,
waste of time,
a waste of time, waste of money. And actually, if I'd have gone, I wouldn't have got into recruitment at 19. So I've noticed though, I suppose what that demonstrates is that they absolutely have this drive to fulfill their potential.
Yes.
And so that's what I look for examples of. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have gone to uni. No. I didn't. But I do think they have to have this sort of drive within them to really push themselves and self-manage. And so I'd always look for examples of that. And usually at that stage where I'm looking for people to come into recruitment, they're either very early on in their career, maybe fresh out of college or fresh out of uni. And so that's what I'm looking at, their academics, because that's all we've got to go off. Or two in my team have actually made sort of career changes.
Right.
So one came in from bids and tenders, and one came in from like operations. And what I would look for there is, again, this self-managed sort of like, ability, and what support have they had, and how resourceful have they been in becoming the best version, of themselves, that they can do with the support that they had. And what I think makes a great mentee is someone that, they'll absorb everything that you're trying to teach them, but they'll also go sort of beyond that and try to learn themselves. And I've noticed that with we've lost a few along the way. With the team that I've got now, you know, I wouldn't change that team for the world. And I feel as though I'm so happy with the people that I've retained in the team.
Good.
But the people that didn't work out, they didn't really have that. They didn't have that, you know, absolute desire to be the best version of themselves. And I think with recruitment, you've got to really want it, because if you're going into it sort of half-arsed, it's not going to work. Or if you've got another option, if it's a case of, I had a really honest conversation with somebody the other day, and she'll probably listen to this, and I know she won't mind me saying, she is one of our clients and her background is in HR, and she's on the move, and she was asking about recruitment and coming here, because she always said, if I ever went into recruitment, you're the only place I'd go. And I was just really honest with her, and I just said, look, if you're always going to have HR in the background as an option, it's not going to work, because recruitment's that hard.
Yes.
That's always going to be the nicer, shinier option. So unless you really want it and you're 100% into it and your heart's in it, don't bother. Because it's not going to work. So I think they're the things for me. They've got to really want it. They've got to be able to prove that they can self-manage, and they've just got to have this desire to really fulfill their potential. And if that's what I see, I'll invest everything into that person. Because
you know that it's worth it. I think that's really, you know, a very pragmatic and honest appraisal of what I think also makes a very good future recruiter. And interestingly, and I'm being a little bit disingenuous because I have to be, I can't give specific examples, but if I ask somebody, you know, what's your desire to want to get into recruitment, if they say, well, because my friend does it, I'm like, that's not enough. It's not enough. I want someone who's prepared to wade through treacle to get to a result.
Because that's every single day.
Because that is literally every day. And then you get to what you think is the prize at the end, and then you find that somebody's moved it back over there and you have to go back through it again. So I think I do think you have to be very resolute, and you have to be, we all know all the sort of typical, you know, traits that we all describe about resilience but actually I do think it's that true sense of self-belief, but it's that willingness to learn. And it's the need and the desire. I think you have to be almost dogmatic. A little bit, but making sure that you've always got that empathy and that you're always prepared to listen and be coached. But I do think you have to be a bit dogmatic about it. And once I bit off my recruitment sort of cherry, that's a terrible word to say, but anyway, I just knew that was it then, and that there was nothing going to stop me. And you know, I think, I don't know about you, but I always look for qualities that I had as that 24-year-old in anyone that's saying they want to get into recruitment. I'm like, how bad do you want this? Because I tell you now, and I encourage more leaders to do this, instead of selling to those future, and we're talking about entry level specifically here, you need to put them off. You need to give them the warts and all. You need to tell them it's absolutely, you know, these are all the bad things. And if they're still coming back, you know you've got a future recruit there. Yeah, that's a really great way to look at it. Yeah. Definitely. The other thing as well is just everything's about mindset in this game, isn't it? And so if there's someone that's got a bit of a victim complex of, oh, this didn't work out for me because of this, that's it for me. Off you pop. No mood hoovers, definitely not. No. And I just, you know, that ties in very nicely and sort of concludes this brilliantly, because I think when you described your sort of journey to success so far, I think you know, you're almost like quite a common sort of accidental leader, because I think that does happen quite a lot, but you're obviously clearly very capable, very competent, and I think you're truly manifesting everything that you desire and not putting any barriers in place. And I think it's really refreshing, Phoebe, and I can see that's why people are drawn to you, because what is actually in theory quite a complicated industry and quite a complicated job, I think you make it seem very accessible. So we need more people like you. Oh, thank you, that's lovely. Definitely. It's funny, isn't it? Because you never see these things for yourself. No, it's just, but it's true. And I love, as the mum to two teenage girls who won't be going to uni and definitely aren't going to uni, and the youngest of whom I think might be starting her recruitment journey this year. Amazing. At 16, I love it. Sweet old age of 16. I just think there are so many routes to success and careers. So that's a whole different podcast, and we have run out of time today. But you have been amazing. We will make sure that we're getting people to look at joining the dots. Thank you. And connecting to you on LinkedIn. But I knew this would be absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. Thank you for having me. You're welcome.